I'll do a brief overview of what is energy healing for the new people. And then we'll have 3 minutes of silence, and I'll explain that when we come to that point. And then a prayer of gratitude, and then a brief review of yesterday, and then diving into today's session. So thank you, everyone, for being with me. Energy healing. What is energy healing? Energy healing is a technology of consciousness. And when I say that, I mean it's a method of not only of both understanding and using consciousness to produce specific effects in the field of expression. That means in the manifest field of creation. It involves both experience and understanding. So that's it in a nutshell. Most of you know what energy healing is. If you want a more detailed description, watch the video from yesterday. Everybody who's here today will receive yesterday's video as well. And I am going to repeat the exercise at the beginning of yesterday's session, just because it was good. And for those who weren't with me yesterday, and for those who were with me yesterday, you get another crack at it. So anyway, that could be fun. All right, so let's go into our silence. Now, the reason we do 3 minutes of silence is because consciousness, awareness, pure awareness, is a field. And it ranges from subtler than the subtlest to completely denser than the densest. It ranges from bigger than the biggest to smaller than the smallest. Is big, eternal. Source of creation is eternal, unbounded, unmanifest, qualityless. And that is the foundation for all energy healing. So it's nice for us to just start out right there. Start out right there at the source of creation, at the deepest, most fundamental level. And best conditions for that experience are inner silence. So let's take a minute, close the eyes for about 3 minutes. I'll let you know when 3 minutes is up, so you don't need to pay attention to the time. My clock down there. I'll mute myself. Thank you. Let's close our eyes. Gently take a moment or two before opening the eyes. Thank you to the source of creation for being everything. Thank you for being all of us and the whole universe and the great eternal tradition of wisdom that sits in the gap between the unmanifest source of creation and the whole manifest field of creation, the connector, the glue. Thank you for our webinar hour, that we may use it in the most valuable, efficient, meaningful, useful way. And thank you to all of you for being here with me and making this happen. Because without you, I'd just be talking to an empty screen. So thank you for being here with me. Thank you for being in my heart. And for me, the opportunity to be of service means a lot. So. What did we do yesterday? Well, we started out, I'm running a workshop right now, which is more hands-on than some of my other offerings, and I'm enjoying it so much. And so I thought, well, it would be lovely to start out with something that's more like an exercise, that I ask you to do something. So we did an exercise at the beginning of yesterday's meeting, and I thought it was fun. And the premise was very simple. You think of what you want to manifest, and then we go through the process step by step of the activation of that desire. It's kind of nice. So I was thinking, well, for those of you who were not with me yesterday and didn't get to do that, we could do it again today. And for those who were with me yesterday, it could be fun to pick another desire, double the value. Of course, you can always go back and watch the videos again. So you can always just fulfill as many desires as you want, basically. And then, so we'll do that again in just a minute. Another point that we talked about was how the manifestation of a desire almost always necessarily includes the current manifestation of something less than what you actually would like to manifest, right? So we talked a little bit about the mechanics of how to shift the momentum of manifestation from something that's not quite what you wanted to something that you want, that you really wanted. So that was interesting to dive kind of deeply into that topic and explore. And then I think from there, we mostly went into questions and answers. And of course, today, as all of you know, being that it's Saturday, I have lots of questions came in overnight, and there were many more questions from the workshop yesterday. And so I thought I would go ahead and just we'll kind of roll with questions today for the most part. But let's take a minute and see how this exercise rolls out. So the first part is to find within your heart the desire that's most important and valuable to you. Find your deepest heart's desire. What do you really want to manifest for this year? I know some of you are just like, oh, I already know that. But others might be, well, how abstract can I understand that? And this is not a point from yesterday, but I think it's important to say, which is that at a more superficial level of the mind, the desire is quite well defined. You could probably put it into words. But as we bring the intention of that desire deeper into the field of consciousness, because it becomes more powerful as it goes deep. So the idea is we look at it in the concrete, and then we look at it in a little more abstract, little more abstract, little more abstract. And what happens when we look at it in the very abstract, what I sometimes call these days, I'm using the term finest abstract. It's a very abstract level of creation. The desire loses its clear definition. It's more like a seed, right? So you have a seed, and it could be a tree seed or a flower seed or a grass seed or a vegetable seed. It's all many different kinds of seeds. Could be could be anything. And at that level, it doesn't really look like the form that it will eventually blossom into as it reaches the more manifest level of creation. But you know what the seed is. You know it because you started up here where it was concrete. You started with the idea as a concrete formed idea. And then you bring it back, bring it back, bring it back. And there comes this point where the seed of desire is experienced more like an impulse of energy, like an impulse of intelligence, something like that. And there it resides in the ocean of all seeds. There's like a sacred nursery deep within the causal level of the field of consciousness, where the seeds of desire reside. All the seeds of desire reside there. And they all appear sort of similar, surprisingly small and abstract and hard to define. But your intention is there. What's important is the fact that your awareness goes there. What's important is what happens to you when the awareness settles down to that level of abstraction. What happens to your nervous system? It's like a resetting. A resetting occurs in the nervous system. So as I was saying yesterday, we'll just go into it. We'll go into the healing, but I wanted to throw that out to you because what was discovered in yesterday's session was that the key to manifesting a different reality, a reality that's on a higher level than the one that we're experiencing now, involves resetting the sense of self as well. And the sense of self is easily, gracefully, comfortably reset when the awareness goes into that very, very deep level of abstraction, where the experience is the abstraction, but also the nervous system has to accommodate that experience. And when the nervous system is in a state of accommodating that experience, then the nervous system is ripe and ready to reform itself into a new shape that will then accommodate your heart's desire to upgrade. It's in a position to upgrade. It becomes more refined. The nervous system becomes more refined. It integrates the value and quality of wholeness. And the process of manifesting what we deeply desire, even those things that may be somewhat improbable, involves a level of resetting on the level of the physiology. Or I should say, it involves resetting on the level of the physiology as well as resetting in the field of consciousness. And that was another point from yesterday, was that consciousness moves so easily. It's so fluid. Can go anywhere, anytime, like just so instantly. It's so fast, fastest thing in the universe. But the body takes a little bit of time, and it's the adaptation of the body to the new condition that is the only thing that really inhibits the ability to manifest anything instantly. Why the desire doesn't manifest instantly is because some adaptation needs to be made. And we will go into that a little more deeply soon when I get into the questions. But for now, let's go ahead and do the exercise. So I'm asking you to take a moment. Everybody has a desire. You have a heart's desire that you would like to have fulfilled in this year or in the years and months and weeks ahead. I am stationing myself in the gap between the absolute and the relative, anchored deeply to the eternal silence and boundless resources of divine being, absolute truth, the source of creation. Boundless compassion, like such compassion, to stabilize your own sense of self in a place where you recognize your absolute deservability for your desire, your absolute right to have exalted desires, good desires, aligned with natural law desires, aligned with universal intention desires, and have them fulfilled. It's incredible. Even the most improbable intentions, when they gain that level of universal support, the universe just wiggles around in order to shift the surrounding circumstances, the context, so that the desire can come forth. One of the things I'm seeing is I'm seeing everybody's desire becoming more delicate and more abstract as we move into this phase for the manifestation. And again, every time the intention becomes a little more abstract, just tidal waves of compassion start flowing through. The compassion can become so great that it would overwhelm the system. And so the ideal response is to just allow the compassion to move through you and return to the ocean of pure compassion, to the ocean of bliss, to the home of compassion, to the source of creation. Then you become, your body and your being, your consciousness becomes a conduit or a vehicle for the compassion to flow. It helps to heal the heart, the compassion. It helps heal the heart, but not just your heart. It also helps to heal the hearts of your ancestors. There's so much in the ancestry of seeing oneself and one's family and then seeing other. There's like an element in the ancestry of seeing others as so different or so separate that the sense of the humanity of others is lost. And so this is healing. This is one of the things it's healing as part of the, we start to fulfill one desire, and what it does is it clicks into, or it laces up with cosmic desire, with universal desire. You receive the gift of unification along with the manifestation of your desire. Because ultimately what's happening is that seed of desire is being unified or combined with the source of creation, which is where all the resources required to manifest that desire come. So there's the lively impulse of creative intelligence in the gap is one of unification. It's like binding or connecting your desire in its seed form to the source of creation that is the source of all nourishment that feeds it. That supports it. And it's as if the field of the manifest creation is oscillating in a very fine way, like so fine, so fine, so fine. You hardly would know it unless you knew it's something like that. There's a fineness, but it's not just down here at that finest abstract, but that oscillation, it's up in this area too, and it's so fine. It's so fine. It's like a very, 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 very fine oscillation of consciousness that supports kind of like a settling of the manifest forms of creation. It allows the field of the manifest to kind of settle and reset itself in first, like imagine you have a container full of, like I had just poured, my son has this protein powder and I poured the protein powder into the container, but the protein powder was like really, really fluffy, right? And there was still like a little bit in the bag, but I couldn't get it in the container because there was too much space in the container, right? So I had to like shake the container a little bit to get all the protein powder that was in there to shake down. Then I could put in the last half a cup of protein powder into the container. So same thing. That oscillation is like this really, 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 really fine shaking, sort of, that's shaking through the manifest field of creation to allow all the bits and pieces, all the parts to settle into a more orderly structure that is then able to accommodate your desire. See how powerful it is to have desires? It's okay. It's beautiful. It's like a gift that you give to the world when you have desires, because your desire helps inform the material created world and the source of creation that's orchestrating that created world, the manifestation of that created world. It informs it of how it needs to restructure itself in order to accommodate the most efficient expression of truth, the truth of being, which is bliss. There is truth in bliss. We are the vehicles or the conduits of the source of creation, of the eternal source. And our bliss is important. Your bliss, your joy is important. And it's the aim toward that joy that fuels the desire. It sits in the middle of the heart energy center. I'm seeing so much adjustment of the energies in the body. And we touched on a little bit yesterday, also some healing for the autonomic nervous system too. Sometimes the path that brings your desire forward also sends you through experiences that are challenging. So the ability to navigate those experiences gracefully, successfully, powerfully is part of the story of bringing forth particularly the less probable desires, right? Because the universe has to change more. The less probable the desire is, the more the universe has to shift around and change in order to accommodate as well. But it's okay. The universe is infinitely flexible. I'm just watching as your individual desires stabilize in the field of consciousness, accommodating and holding space for that. That's all. And what am I doing? Illustrating a little bit through my own behavior, how to place your own awareness in the gap between the absolute and the relative, so that you can always manifest desires. Some of them come up like a single wave, and some of them come up through repetition. And that's why it's important that you're receiving both the example of how to do it right now in this one webinar, but also the pattern, like from an algorithmic perspective, right? Like how to place awareness in that gap so that you go and return again. For years, I was interested in manifesting a healing space for myself, just so that I could be in that space of rejuvenation and comfort and wellness. And what happened from years of doing that was I ended up with an environment around myself that is extremely conducive to comfort. And I wasn't even expecting that as a byproduct or result. But when I think of what is that healing space, it is a place of tremendously deep comfort. And so no surprise that by returning again and again to that seed and nourishing it and nurturing it, eventually I have a place now, like my bed is so comfortable and the spot where I sit and meditate is so comfortable and my whole house is so comfortable. And I didn't even realize how uncomfortable it had been for so many decades until I got a comfortable bed. And I'm like, oh my gosh, no wonder I couldn't sleep. So sometimes the desire can come to the surface in ways you were not expecting. But when the desire is grounded in your essential truth, when it's grounded in the highest intentions for yourself from both an individual and a cosmic level, then however it comes to the surface will be something beautiful for you. So may it be. May it be so. So it is. So it is. Thanks. Thanks for going through that little experiment with me. All right. Let's start looking at questions. One of the themes of yesterday's healing session was, may the peaceful people of the world be the powerful people. And thank you to my dear, sweet friend who offered that as a seed for the webinar this time around. It just worked out beautifully. And there's a song, so we'll send the song to everybody. And yeah, it's just really, really comes from such a level of purity and highest intention for everyone's highest well-being, that the peaceful people of the world become the powerful people of the world. So a question came in from this beautiful man who he asked me not to describe his question in so much detail that people can figure out who he is. But his company makes windows. It makes windows. And windows, as we know, are like eyes on buildings, aren't they? They're the part of the building or the structure, or your car or something. They're the part of the structure that allows awareness that supports the flow of awareness from the inner regions of creation out to the material level of creation. It's just such an interesting thing to be the person who creates that, whose responsibility is to create that. But his job is very specified. So he creates windows just for one certain faction of our culture and society to be able to see, just one, like a very specialized kind of windows that are connected to and associated with what we would think of as the part of our world that we would associate with the immune system. Because the job of the immune system is to see what comes into the body, if it's a friend or if it's a foe, and then to identify clearly that, and then to get to work on either accepting and receiving or eliminating the foe from the system. And he said it was so interesting because he experienced himself, this ties back into the premise that the peaceful people should become the powerful people. He experiences himself awareness diving again and again and like scanning. I'm sort of paraphrasing what you said, but sort of like scanning through and being attentive to, like, hand on the pulse of the part of our culture and our world, our country, whose job is to be like the immune system. And it's very interesting to be the person who stands at the junction between that aspect of power in our world, because that the immune system is very powerful, it's like a really important, powerful position, and its ability to see clearly, and therefore its ability to function in a healthy manner, to be discriminating. And it's very fortunate that the man who's in charge of making these windows is very intelligent and very discriminating, because he brings the value of discrimination to an area of our social structure that needs that. It needs to be intelligent and discriminating, very careful. Every choice, every decision needs to come up with precision. The ability to take into consideration each perception in each moment, in the context, and we've talked about this in the past, in the context of all the moments. So this is one of the great precious gifts of the discriminating ability, is to consider truth within the context of all truth, or to consider what one is looking at in the context of where it has been and where it's going. Because that ability to do that informs the present moment in a way that nothing else can. It enhances discernment and discrimination in a way that nothing else can. Because we all know that at different times in the cycle of creation, different requirements are placed upon the decision maker, right? The actor, the person who's performing action. Time. We're looking at the experience in the context of time. And when we look at the experience in the context of time, we're going directly into the nervous system, because this is what our nervous systems do, is they take this vast eternal wholeness of experience all the way from the beginnings of the creation to the ends of the creation, and they block it out so that it's experienced as a linear unfoldment. And that ability to do that informs wholeness. It talks to wholeness, and it tells the source of creation what's going on at the material level. It's like a dialogue that's going on between that unmanifest eternal source of creation and all that it creates. And it creates what it creates because it knows that the creation is going to inform it. And so when we place ourselves in that position to look at whatever it is that we're looking at in a discerning or discriminating manner within the context of time, what has come before and what has come after, this brings a level of understanding and recognition of the whole picture into focus. It collapses it down into the point of the present moment. The shift for everyone. It's, yeah. All right. Thank you for sharing your experience and your question. And so grateful. I'm so grateful that that someone with such great inner vision and ability to experience totality is in such a powerful position. As for being in charge of all those who see, all those who protect, see. It's very powerful. The next one is a lady sharing her desire. She desires to live experiencing joy and abundance while radiating the fullness of life with grace and ease, reflecting this in service to those who are seeking. What a beautiful desire. And the woman who sent this in too is one of the most elegant, gracious, graceful, lovely women. Really, it's a lifetime spiritual devotee, such a beautiful soul. So thank you for sharing your desire. there's so much completeness in this desire that I feel that the seed itself is like already deeply developed and anchored into your being, like it's in you deeply, because I can feel this has been a desire. It's been a desire for a long time, and that you're already manifesting this so much in your life. So the only thing about it is that as such, you become a symbol or a representative to others of what they can achieve. And that's beautiful, but it doesn't necessarily it doesn't necessarily show the parts of the process that inevitably people have to go through in order to get to that place. Right? Because if you're already at the point where you're completely expressing the kind of like the culmination of a long lifetime of spiritual work, right? And you're at the point where you're experiencing abundance and joy consistently, then people look at that and they just go, oh, well, I just want to do that. But from where they are, they might have to go on this path, right? And the path, and that ties into this other question, if I can find which one it is. Let me organize myself here for a second, because it was related. I said I was going to talk about this later. So, yes, this one here. So I'm combining it a little bit with this other one, because I think that there's a relationship here. So this person says, my deepest desire since I read Masters of the Far East, a beautiful book, is to walk in the divine energy of wisdom and abilities as my way shower Jesus. I want to serve humanity in that way. How beautiful, right? And do you think that this can help to fulfill that desire? The answer is yes, absolutely. You can do that. Absolutely. And we need more people. And so it's not like so very different, right? Because the other lady wants to also be, wants to just radiate the truth to the world in a way that's blissful and filled with abundance and grace and ease. And the point that I want to make about this, because it kind of both of your questions tie in a little bit to an experience that I shared yesterday that I didn't share today, about how I also had that desire back in the day. And the desire did get fulfilled for me, but the path was rife with challenges as well, right? I had to rise up again and again and again. I had to go through the dark night of the soul and, all these different levels of experience that provided and informed me with the information that I needed to be able to do this work the way I'm doing it. And when you do it, it'll be a little different, obviously, because we all do it differently, obviously. And it depends on how much of the darkness you want to address in your work, right? Because, for instance, with the lady with the first question, she just wants to experience joy and abundance, basically. So what that means is, you can radiate that wholeness and fullness to the creation without getting in the mud. That's what I'm reading through your question. You want to do it, but you don't want to get muddy in the process, which is beautiful. It's a beautiful desire. And I feel well-deserved and well-earned. And most likely that would be the way you would do that. But they're all degrees of addressing the darker energies of creation, depending on the stability of the emotional structure of self and nervous system. And so like that, if the healing that you give to the world is simply through radiance, then you never have to really explore the darker regions of creation, which is lovely and appropriate, I would say. But it's different for different people, right? Like the thing about Jesus, the second lady wants to do it more the way Jesus does it. And Jesus was no stranger to the mud, right? He got right down in the mud. And I've thought a lot about this, the work of Jesus, since my children put us onto a TV series called The Chosen. I'm sure the lady who sent this question in is familiar with that, but for those of you who aren't, it's created by a small indie company, and it's free online, and it's lovely. It's really lovely. If you have time, it's really lovely. It's free. I think the first season is free on YouTube. Anyway, you can look up The Chosen and see the story of Jesus from the perspective of the disciples, from like the perspective of you and I, essentially. That's how the man who's making it is a great storyteller, and he's really put it together in a beautiful way. So it's been lovely to dive into that process through that offering, which is available right now on Our Earth. And it wasn't 5 or 10 years ago. So that's a nice thing. But the point that I want to make is I've thought about it. And one of my thoughts is, it's lovely. It would be so lovely to be a person who could support others in such an important, intimate, powerful way. But it would not be lovely to become a martyr, right? Because being a martyr is not sustainable. I mean, think of what Jesus could have accomplished if he hadn't died when he was in his early 30s, right? Right. So the thing that I love about both of your desires is that this is what we need on Earth at this time, is many, many, many people having the desire to be at that level of power, the peaceful people being powerful people, to be at that level of power and ability to support and uplift, to support the manifestation of wholeness at every point in creation, and to uplift the lives of everyone that you touch in a way that brings more truth, big truth with a capital T, the big truth, to light, the deep truth, the eternal truth. Being, it like supports a restructuring of this world in such a way that being shines forth in each person more completely, more perfectly, more succinctly, with discernment. More and more people doing that. Could you imagine? We would have the foundation, absolutely, for heaven on earth. Or we could say for a life that is dignified and an appropriate reflection of the value of humanity for all people. It's very beautiful. All right. So those two questions. Yeah, so one has to be, for the second lady, be careful, be discerning, because when you step onto that path, you may have to bring that level of light forward. The shadows have to get pretty deep in order to provide a contrast to the light, if that makes sense. And so one, and especially where you are with your life, she gives her age, and so it would be very nice for that path, the path that you walk, to be very dignified and graceful. You deserve that. You've earned it. You've earned it, you know, where you are. And so I think maybe almost like a combination of the two, right? We want to be, it's beautiful to be at that level of the abilities and the instrument of the divine as Jesus, and yet also with that aspect of experiencing life as a joy and abundantly, and also, as I said, in a dignified manner. And so it's a big ask. It's a big ask from the creator, right? Because it's really, really efficient and really easy for the universe, which only wants evolution, to kind of slap you really hard. And then as long as it doesn't kill you, right? What doesn't kill you makes you stronger, to slap you hard enough that you get stronger really fast, but not so hard that you die. But then it takes time to unravel the stress that occurs as a byproduct of that particular experience. And so what I'm saying is that energy healing, I think, is a good tool that can come in and help mitigate the effects of overwhelm in the system. And that's the important thing, is we want to do what we want to do, but we don't want to get stressed out trying to do that. So mitigating the overwhelm is a matter of using consciousness to interact with the physiology, because it's the physiology that gets overwhelmed. It's the form itself that goes, oh, I can't handle this much light all at once. It's too much. And so the physiology is like, I have to take a rest. I was going on this course and now I just like can't go on that course. And the other side of that process is that the moment the physiology realizes I'm going on this course and I can't go further because I'm physically unable to go further on this course, that's where the next step is really extremely important. It is then going on the path of refining and integrating the physiology so that you can continue on that course. But the process of refinement and purification, refinement, integration, can be hampered if we start to identify with the stress. And so we talked, I think, quite a bit about that yesterday, about how one self-identifies as one of the key components for being able to manifest what you want in the most effective manner. Self-identification. And there's an old pattern stuck deep in the collective memory banks, in the ancestry, in the even past lives, of when you hit that point that the physiology can go no further, that it quits being, the physiology itself begins to hamper the ability to be the instrument or vehicle for the divine, to identify oneself as insufficient, not good enough, a failure, etc. That self-identification inhibits the next step. And the next step is purification, integration. Purification and integration and growth. Thank you to the tradition of wisdom for offering us that concept, purification, integration, and growth. That's not from Dorothy, that's from Vedic science. That's from my teacher, Maharishi. Purification and integration. So the minute, this is the shift, the minute the system starts to become overwhelmed, the minute the physiology, the flesh fails, we go straight into purification and integration, straight into it. And purification gets a bad rap because it's the part of the evolutionary cycle that tends to be associated with discomfort and pain. But remember, the evolutionary process is only really painful or uncomfortable if we resist it. It's the resistance that causes the process to not just move smoothly, to just flow forth smoothly. So the resistance to the purification, and that's because purification gets the bad rap, right? Because there are memory patterns and impressions that are associated with the purification part of the evolutionary cycle that trigger the amygdala and the hippocampus. They trigger the pain center and the memory center. Sometimes the pain center and the memory center need to be triggered, and the autonomic nervous system. But sometimes the situation warrants sliding. It warrants easing into the experience in a way that's really supportive of the purification from the context of that purification's, that experience of purification's place in the sequence of all experiences. We come back to that because when you can, when the awareness is willing to take that, to plug that little impulse of intelligence, we can say, into the process, it eases everything. So when this is what's happening, is the purification process is being defined. There's a little definition being like a flag being put on as soon as that purification process begins, to look at it in the context of the whole. When we look at it in the context of the whole, it makes sense. And when the difficult, challenging experience makes sense, think of a woman giving birth, right? It's very uncomfortable to give birth, but the mama knows that it's going to result in a baby. And like, that's a good thing, right? So she's like, yeah, bring it, right? It's like, it hurts. Yeah. Because if you didn't know that there was going to be a baby at the end of that process, I actually have a friend who's having a baby right now, so I'm thinking about her. But anyway, if you didn't know there was a baby at the end of that process, you could be in that and think you're just going to die. It's like the whole system would seize up and there would be a lot more muscle tension where there didn't need to be. And you see what I'm saying? There'd be resistance. There would be resistance. But when one is able to see the purification within the context of the whole evolutionary cycle, then instead of resisting, one takes the position that allows it to do what it needs to do in order to help you evolve. Sorry, my breakfast. What you need to do, how you need to place yourself like a mama. Yes. Bring it. Bring it. Bring it, because this is the most exciting day of my life. That's where we want to be when the purification comes. You can do it. It changes everything. It changes everything. And it opens up your own awareness of your heroic nature, of your ability to face impossible challenges and bring the resources to bear upon those challenges that allow you to find success, even in the least probable circumstances. And that's what we have to do. And we have to do that as a collective right now too, because once again, our world is facing challenges that seem almost impossible to overcome. Anyway, oh, that was a nice long one. Okay, I've got one more question here. I think I've got a few questions up here. Thanks for the question. What's the green stone in my necklace? Very beautiful. It's beautiful, isn't it? It definitely is a stone, but I don't know what it is. I got it on eBay. It was made in the Middle East somewhere, right? It's like this lovely thing. And I love it because it is real stone, but I don't always know what stones I wear. Some of them I do. Some of them I work, I actually go and I get a specific stone that I absolutely specifically want, and so and so. But thank you for asking. It is beautiful, isn't it? Yeah, it's not moldavite though. I know that. I think I actually asked the seller what it was and they didn't know either. Lovely. Sorry, I'm grabbing my heater. Okay, my desire is to live in a new home in peace, love, grace, in complete harmony with the community, to sell our home, and that the buyer will love it immensely. Oh, that's such a great desire. It has been her desire for so long. May this desire manifest for the highest good. Oh, you are such a love and you are so patient. Absolutely. Absolutely. I feel like I've looked again and again how the desire needs to, in order to manifest forth, it needs to be like unfettered by threads of expectation, associating it with other levels of happiness and comfort. I think that was the main point that my last deep look into the selling of the home was that in order for it to stand on its own, right? Just to be on its own, so that your happiness, not like you're waiting. It's not like your happiness is waiting for the home to sell, but your happiness is already here with you, and it's stable and it's established. And from the foundation of that bliss, then the home sells, because that's what people feel when they come in to look at the home, right? they see the physical features of the home, but they feel the bliss. They feel the level and quality of your life as a being and your being occupying that home. And when you're already established in your own joy, and I know that you have joy, I know that you have comforts and happiness within you, because it's lovely to be connected with you and to see through your beautiful eyes the beauty of this world, that like none other. It's just really amazing that then the people who come to look at the home will see the beauty of it through the bliss that you experience by creating beautiful spaces in the home. And as for finding just the right home, it may be that as you're looking at other homes, that your decisions about which one would be good or which one would not be good or so could also be colored by the inability of the sellers to have that same level of refinement and broad comprehensive vision that you have of what is really beautiful. So if you go into another home and you see it kind of as the previous occupant has cultivated that home through their consciousness, it can be a disappointment. But so I say my offering on this account is to recognize the power of your own potential to transform a space into a shape that will conform to the depth and breadth of your vision of beauty. There's a potential. It's not that you're not looking at the house, what it looks like, you're looking at the potential of the house, if that makes sense, the homes that you're looking at to purchase, right? And that from that perspective, may it be that it opens up a really broad field of potential wonderful homes for you. Whereas before, I know it felt like there just was like nothing on the market available. The good news is, I don't know how things are in your country, how they are here, but the market has settled down nicely. Hasn't it settled down somewhat here in the US? I just checked with my husband, because there was a period last year where the prices of homes was really, really scarily, ridiculously high. People were just, it was very hard to buy a home, and people were crazy going after homes like that. And it's settled down a little bit. So it's more reasonable. If you make an offer on a home, there won't be like 60 other people also giving cash down, trying to beat the next guy. Kind of, it was crazy last year, but it's better now. So may the softer, smoother, more comfortable market support you in that process. And may you see the fundamental potential in the homes that you go into, so that many more homes come before your eyes that are really beautiful and would really genuinely, sincerely fulfill your needs for a great place to live, to abide with your dear husband. Just that little shift. We shift the lens, right? We shift the focus just a little bit to seeing the potential. Reflecting one's own potential. It reflects personal potential. And it reflects into the level of deservability and how one feels about being deserving of that really nice space to live. What you really need and deserve, and also some prioritization of what's really of that potential, like what's really important and what isn't. We moved in the last year, and the home we live in has really, 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 really small bathrooms, like really like smallest bathrooms I've ever seen. Two of them, but one of them is really, really small. And when we looked at the house, I thought, oh, that's going to be a little uncomfortable to have such a small bathroom. Like one of them's so small, you can't get two people in it, just one person in that bathroom, which is okay for a bathroom, right? But the thing is, the point is that at the time I thought, I wonder if that's going to be a pinch for me. But now that we're here, I realize that the aspects of the house that are nurturing and good and really The parts that are good are so good. They're so, so, so good that it doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter. I am more than happy to put up with the small bathroom because the other aspects of the house just have a very powerful impact on the way I live. So we have to give and take, little give and takes, little give and takes. What's really, really important. One does not spend one's whole day in the bathroom anyway, right? We spend most of the day out and rest of the house. What is nature asking you to let go? My desire is to help my severe hip arthritis so that I can walk without any walking aids and use my healthy body to give back and serve. Arthritis is heat because it's inflammation, right? It's caused by inflammation, and inflammation rises up when anger is misdirected or unprocessed. And hips are the place. Is it your left hip? It feels like left to me. But hips are a foundational structure in the body. They're not only the foundation of the whole torso and the upper body, but they're also the foundation by which we transport ourselves, the foundation for locomotion, right? And so there's a strong ancestral energy in the hips because our ancestry is our foundation. And I'm looking into the cells and the tissues down in the hip. It means I see an ancestral pattern of having trouble grappling with or dealing with issues associated with anger. So right there is a download for the ancestors of how precious and useful and valuable anger is to inform the setting of healthy boundaries in relationships and in life in general. The ancestors can embrace the energy of anger by developing discrimination in the way it comes to the surface. Because if it comes to the surface as an expression of the truth that's behind the necessary setting of boundaries, right? Like this world has to have some structure. Otherwise, we live in anarchy and chaos, right? So the structure and the setting of boundaries is an essential component in any kind of collective living. But it has to be on the foundation of genuine truth, truth with a capital T, big truth. So here, when the anger is placed in the context, again, of wholeness, right? Then wholeness informs the anger why it has risen up. It's a really super uncomfortable feeling, right? So as long as it's present, one is always going to be somewhat uncomfortable. But the minute one leverages the anger as a tool for setting those boundaries and uses the anger, which is like a high energy emotion, to dig in and find what is the actual truth of this situation that needs to be expressed. In other words, why is a boundary important in this place, essentially? That once that understanding is there, then it's easy to bring the anger forward in a way that is, like, I would say, small enough chunks, small enough bites of the truth. Like you say to a person, a boundary needs to be set here, a firm boundary, because I love you, right? But then the truth has to come out in pieces that are small enough that the individual can be led through the logic and reason of why that boundary is important. And as it's happening, and it's happening with our whole group, our whole collective, one of the energies that's coming forward is the importance of using the highest standards, highest moral and ethical standards as a measure behind the fulfillment of desires. It kind of comes back to the manifestation of desires. But we want to manifest desires that are virtuous, right? Because, and of course you are, obviously, but it's important because when the desire manifests, it changes everything. It's like when a child is born, the whole universe changes. When a desire is born and manifests to the surface level of expression, it changes everything for everybody. Really, it like becomes part, it gets big, becomes baked in and part of the reality in which we live. And when that happens, if that desire is on the highest level, then the effects, the beneficial positive effects from the manifestation of that desire are like the gift that keeps on giving. They just keep coming back again and again and again and again and again. If there's something a little bit off of the desire, then as the effects of that presence in this world come back, they come back with a little piece of discomfort associated with them. And we don't want that, because we're aiming not just for fulfillment of desires in the present moment, we're also aiming for fulfillment of desires in the long term, and particularly in the long term. The pain in the hip is there. It pulls you back, it pulls you inward so that the awareness is working from a subtler level. Once the pattern of subtler functioning is established, then the need to hold you back, to stop you from getting up and going, is no longer necessary. I see. Did you come back to me? Which one is it? Right hip. It's the right hip. Okay. Okay. So the right hip is the masculine side. This would be father's lineage. And also the way we move forward in the material field of creation. How do I move forward? And this makes sense with the anger, right? How do I move forward with the material level of creation? Because that's where I show up in this world. And if I'm good at setting healthy boundaries with people, but I do it in a way that hurts people's feelings, then that in the long run comes back, reflects back from my environment in a way which is not life supporting for me or is not comfortable. So I'm feeling into the tissues now, the right hip. In the joint. It's such a, it's a more masculine thing to let the anger kind of flash forward and to figure that people can just buck up. So the discernment is increasing in the right hip. Discernment increasing in the right hip. Along with the discernment comes the whisperings of the universe of those materials and antidotes and structures in this world that will have a genuinely healing effect on this hip. If you've had it for a while, which I expect you have, you've probably tried lots of things, but you can certainly try the hand chakra exercise from my knowledge base. Tom, can we put that in the email that people get? I'm feeling myself working on the next 2 questions. We have 3 minutes, 2 questions for 3 minutes, but may the solutions that are really effective come to you once there's a saying from Vedic science, once the karma is paid, the cure comes. So the principle here is that by increasing discernment in the right hip, and especially if you use your hand chakra and you're creating some light medicine to go in there, then the light medicine will also have the discernment in it. And it's a gift that we give to the father's lineage, right? We give the gift of discernment that even though those individuals are no longer in the world, they still are growing and evolving wherever they are. And any prayers that you give them for increased discernment will reach them and will support their ability to make those changes that they need to make at this time. It's happening now because this is the time that the world really needs that. And it needs to heal from the effects of harsh parenting over the course of centuries. Especially father and grandfather. Some boys come into the world with such sweet, tender little hearts, you know, but so bouncy. Anyway, I see a lot happening, but let's go to the next two questions. I'm going to take this one first, I think, because she emailed in earlier. So this lady had this amazing experience where she was practicing yoga and listening to music at the same time, and then had this very spontaneous urge to get up and dance. And so she did. And her mom, who died 4 months ago, had always wanted to be in the entertainment world and dance, but didn't ever have that chance because she devoted her life to being a mother of 4 children. And she witnessed herself being kind of like a channel for her mother a little bit. And it seems out of the realm of her life experience, but she felt somehow as if the dancing was like a healing gift for her mother. And her question was it such? Was it a healing for the mother? Was she a channel for her mother's desire? At the finest abstract level of creation, the amount of life is much more concentrated than it is at the surface level. So at the surface physical level, I can say where the boundaries of my body are, right? I'm here, you're there, we're not overlapping, right? We're not like, well, because at the surface level, they're really, really, really clear boundaries. Still on the topic of boundaries. But at the abstract level, the boundaries are not clear. In fact, the closer one's awareness comes to the source of creation, the more compact being becomes. So at the fine level, at the finest abstract level of creation, down here, what I call the causal body, if you want to look that up on my knowledge base, life forms are like, they're like interlacing with each other and overlapping with each other and folding in and out of each other and like that. And it's the amount of life force, because all the bodies and beings at that level are just light bodies, right? So the amount of life, the number of lives, the number of souls, you could say, is just vast compared to what it is at the gross superficial level. But there are regions of that finest relative that our hearts share with the people of our world and the people of our life. And there are sacred spaces where you and your mother are not separate from each other in that way. The hearts are one. The heart is one. And what you feel is what she feels. And when I read this account from you, I saw you dancing together. I saw her dancing. She's finally dancing. She's finally doing this entertaining that she wanted to do, right? She wanted to dance. She wanted to be that person. And now she's doing it. And her joy is so great. And it's so over the top blissful. It's so blissful that she wanted to share that with you. She wanted you to know that bliss and the way you could understand that bliss, because, you know, we all learn in different ways, right? And one of the ways of your learning is through the body. Anybody who's doing yoga at like 8 or 9 o'clock at night probably is rather devoted to their practice, right? I am inferring from the points in your email. So because of that, in order for you to understand the message that your mother was sending to you through the heart, was to get up and actually dance yourself and to experience that bliss and that joy and that being. And yes, you're doing that in the material relative field of creation was also a validation for her, that you heard her, that you understood her, that you get her. It's a very beautiful experience. And that you're not so separate, that I'm sure on one level, the body is no longer here, but on another level, the soul has just risen up to a higher resonance of its own nature. And so you can still find her, because again, it's like that energy signature that was the soul of your mother becomes finer, finer, finer. And she's in a light body. So she's down here. It's like those seeds of manifestation that we were looking at earlier. It becomes very abstract, but it's still her. So you're never without her. You never lose her. She's always a part of you. And you continue to work together to support the overarching evolutionary trajectory of the universe, the cosmic intentions. That's why a lot of times we think of those who've passed over to the other side, to the other world, the spirit world, as being like angels who are just kind of singing the glories of God all day long, something like that. Because there is this dedication to these larger impulses of evolution that are running through the entire field of expression. It's very beautiful. She may come back. I wonder why my desire for good, robust health has been so blocked, despite all my efforts to take care of myself. The karma of the situation and this time that you're in is an inward stroke. The body is always trying to help us evolve. And the body understands where it sits in the context of the whole creation. Even though that may not be something that we think about individually on a day-to-day, moment-to-moment basis, the body's always aware of it. And so it breaks down when it wants the awareness to be more settled. It wants you to take a rest, essentially. That's what getting sick is about. When you are able to lean into that inward stroke of awareness and inward stroke of the mind, and I know it takes patience if you've got long-standing chronic issues. So, but even long-standing chronic issues will often be connected to or associated with particular epochs in the lifespan. So, for example, there are periods in life that are overseen by specific influence of specific planets in your relationship with the different planets. And this one, which is the north node of the moon, the Vedic term is Rahu. And it's like an, I don't know, 18 or 20-year period. It's a long period. And it's a period where the influence is a harsh teacher. You know, if we want to evolve, we could, like the lady who wants to evolve, you know, her desire is to live a life of bliss and abundance, joy and abundance. And that's certainly within everyone's potential. But sometimes the overarching influence is that one goes through a period of learning lessons that are not easy lessons. And sometimes it can be really useful because, for instance, I was working with a man some years ago whose wife had passed on when his boys were just young, like teenagers. And it was so traumatic for the children. And she died of natural causes, but it was still just horrible for them to lose their mother. And as a result, they kind of gave up the ghost on school. They just couldn't go to school. He couldn't make them go to school. So they were sort of homeschooling. But then it turned out that in the county, in the area that he was in, this was just a few years ago, that some of the changes in the educational system were giving rise to targeting children who were vulnerable, emotionally vulnerable, such as his boys, and supporting directions of development that were not at all healthy, not even slightly a little bit healthy for them. And as a result, his boys avoided that entirely. They just completely avoided that big mess because they were out of school like about 5 or 6 years, something like that. And they're smart. And they were able to do the homeschool thing. And they were able to self-educate. And they were able to achieve great things in their life. They are able to achieve great things in their life. So sometimes one, by having some kind of delicate health concerns or considerations, one actually avoids falling into traps that are already present in the larger field of the collective. It's also part of that inward stroke, right? One is going inward and seeking the truth. And in that process, one avoids being gripped or caught in expressions of non-truth that are going on in the collective field. This is your time. This is your time to self-nurture. You have all these efforts that you're putting into taking care of yourself. But the big one is establishing the habit of always taking care of yourself. And that also means shifting sense of self to be so beloved and so worthy and so valuable and so being able to see what you contribute and give to the world in terms of the radiance of the source life force and the source material through you, like a baby, right? Babies are so precious, but they don't do anything. They sleep, they nurse, they sleep some more. That's what babies do. They don't do nothing. They just are. They just radiate. But they're so beautiful. They're like the most attractive, luscious, wonderful thing, human form. I mean, at least from a feminine perspective, right? As a woman, babies are so nice. And they don't have to do anything, because just as they are, in the radiance of their being, they are exquisite. They're such pure reflection of that source, fresh from the gates of heaven, right? That source of creation energy. And your being and your body wants you to do that. It wants you to get into the groove of that and into the mode of that. And once you're in the mode of that, then you also will have direct personal internal access to all these resources that you need to heal the body. And you will heal yourself. You will heal. But there's the planetary influence, and even the harshest teachers of the planetary influences only want our evolution. They may be harsh and they may be unfair or something, but they are aiming for highest evolution. And you will come out of this time in a completely different space, a completely more liberated, internally liberated space. It was the constraints that were being experienced inside the being, inside the physiology, inside the field of consciousness that formed the seeds of the illness. And so it's the liberation from those seeds, from those constraints, that establishes the precise seeds of health. Download on that. Download for what those seeds actually look like, what they actually feel like. Reasonable and what's the word? Probable. Probable. Working with your potential that's achievable That's achievable. Clearing resentment against the body and clearing other resentments as well. There's a lot of resentment. It's okay. We all experience it. It's not uncommon in the human experience to have that. But knowing that resentment is one of the key energies that is dissolving and is founded on a pattern of seeing the problems that arise and sort of focusing a little more on those problems. So now we see the experience in the context of all that came before and all that came after, right? In the context of wholeness. And when we do that, we find that even the most difficult personalities, even the most difficult situations, even the times and experiences of the past that were really horrible, had lights within them. There were also good things about that. And that it's not that we deny the existence of issues and problems, but the context is really important, because the context illuminates the evolutionary value, and the evolutionary value is the important part of everything that we experience. So may that be the dominating factor. And going back, and I see your big universal self going back and working some of those past experiences where you went through something and then you focused on the darker part of it, and then it became like a little dialogue, right? Oh, every time I think of that thing, there's got this little story that goes, got this little narrative that goes along with it because that person did me wrong or whatever. And yes, they did. They were the vehicle. They were the vehicle for the growth. But one can only thank those who are obnoxious and mean and abusive and cruel for sacrificing their own goodness so that we can have the lessons we need to learn to evolve. One can only thank them and get the heck out of their way too. It's like, well, okay, I learned my lesson. Now I don't need to be in that. May grace, the grace and the forgiveness and the appreciation for the sacrifice that some souls make in order to show up in a really ugly way in this world so that we can learn. May that be the dominating energy that flows through your body. And that is the light medicine to heal your beautiful body, and you deserve to heal. So may it be, may you be able to use that energy to heal yourself. Thank you for being with me. I'm so grateful. I'm so grateful. I'm so grateful to have a chance to be in a little dialogue with you. Thank you. And thank you everybody else for all your sweet, beautiful, the lady whose mother passed on says she's so much better out of her body. Yeah, I bet. I bet she is. That's really nice. All right, my dears. It's been lovely to be with you. Amazing. Got through all the questions. Woohoo. And I'm grateful that we had this time together. I'll look forward to seeing you all like in about, for next webinar in about 4 weeks. And for the next workshop in about 2 weeks. And I hope everybody has a great beginning of their year, sowing the seeds of fulfillment for everyone. Thank you all so much for being with me. Bye.